It should be noted that this movie was only greenlit after the huge success of Guardians of the Galaxy in August of 2014 when it racked in about $700 million, beating the likes of Man of Steel. That was a big deal for Marvel because it was a big risk. Guardians of the Galaxy was not a very well known franchise, and it was essentially about a group of misfits who meet in a prison who have witty banter with each other. Some are bad people, some are just comedic people, your random smuggler types just do stuff for money. Both movies feature a stellar soundtrack with rock and pop music that feature its irreverent tone and bring across a lightheartedness in the movie itself. Both their villains are so underutilized, it's very unfortunate, but that's also because they want to spend more time showing the witty banter, the chemistry between our heroes, the badassery, their personalities shining through. So we spend less time with the, let's say, Ronin and Enchantress. There's a lot of similarities between Guardians of the Galaxy and Suicide Squad, but I'm not gonna knock WB for that because Warner Brothers, just like all studios, they're following trends. They're seeing what's working with audiences. They're trying to find their niche audience. But this movie should have been its own thing, and the first half of the movie is like stellar work, stellar editing, stellar origin stories. It's really amazing. So much fan service. It's really some great stuff. However, it's unfortunate how quickly the movie overstays its welcome. You immediately want it to end like near the halfway mark. I don't know what happened. You realize the whole movie has no plot, and I think that was something that I was hearing a lot about this movie, was that there's a point in the movie where you're enjoying it, and then you realize there's no plot. And when it happened with me, it came out of nowhere. I was like, holy shit, this movie really does have no plot. Like, it's not going anywhere. They're just gonna fight a guy, and the movie's gonna end. But it was still really good because, I'm a huge fan of all of these characters. I'm a fan of Killer Croc. I'm a fan of Deadshot. I'm a fan of Harley Quinn. I'm a fan of Amanda Waller and her antics and her lies, and she's basically an evil Nick Fury. And sometimes that got annoying. Sometimes, like in the beginning of the movie where she's at the restaurant trying to get her Task Force X, trying to get her super team approved, That just reminds me so much of, like, the Avengers Initiative and how we always saw Sam Jackson, like, bringing his papers in to Tony Stark for the Avengers Initiative. Like, it's very deja vu-like, and they could have gone around that a little easier. But I'm also a fan of the narrative of this franchise, that the villains formed to save the world before the heroes did, and how everybody was like, holy shit, like, those monsters saved us, and now it's going to be like the Justice League are gonna come and just totally overshadow what the Suicide Squad did. I kind of like that narrative for these 4 films, or 5 films, including Wonder Woman. The intros of all these characters are great, specifically Enchantress. She was really good. Her first scene was probably like one of my favorites in the movie, the government agents see her for the first time. Amazing. I'm not sure who this movie is specifically made for, though. There's a lot of cliche elements that I'm not a fan of, especially in terms of what the villain is doing, the bad guys, our bad guys are fighting. It's very Power Rangers-esque with the putty guys and their black faces, and they blow up and their heads can fall off and they still fight and stuff. They're just basically cannon fodder, and it's sad because this movie and Batman v Superman are just a mix of all of the bad things in superhero movies. Like, Age of Ultron was boring because we just see Avengers fighting robots, and nobody cares. Nobody cares about robots. Nobody cares about cannon fodder villains, like henchmen that like don't have personalities. And that's what these guys were. They were just like possessed. And the reason why they're all black faced and like they can die really easily and all that is because this movie should have been rated R. And if Enchantress was taking over these people, and then they just looked like themselves, and they were just like possessed, and then like Harley Quinn had to like bash somebody's face in, but like it wasn't that guy's fault. Like, that would have been awesome. That would have been like so dark and bloody and just like, but it's just boring since it's just like Power Rangers. They just look like putties, and Enchantress herself is just reminded me of a Power Rangers villain. And then, like, she even gets her own fucking Lord Zed. Her brother shows up, and I don't know what the fuck he was all about, but, fucking Lord Zed and Rita Repulsa were in this movie. And that's sort of how the third act falls for everybody. It just kind of loses itself, and characters sort of like hear a heartwarming story, one heartwarming story, and now they're all together, and now they're working together, and it doesn't. There's not that much going on. There's not that much of a hook. I think they're just kind of throwing sympathetic stories at us and like expecting them to stick. Some of them do stick really well, but it doesn't flow all together very well. You know, it doesn't give you a reason why this team wants to be working together by the end of it. And when you hear about some of the deleted scenes that they took out, you realize this movie had so much more going for it. And I'm trying to be as spoiler free as possible right now, so I'm gonna get into the more, you know, into the things I actually liked instead of just complaining, because I love this movie. I really do. I can't wait to watch it again. I can't wait to watch the extended cut. But I'm trying to look at this at the eyes of somebody who doesn't know these characters and just wanted to see a good movie, because I don't think this is that great. This shouldn't be like a mediocre film, because mediocre films are worse than bad films. They're worse than anything, because this movie is just mediocre. It's just okay, because, you know, the thing that I wanted to take away from Suicide Squad would have been, they did it better than the animated version. And again and again with DC films, I had to say it after Man of Steel, I had to say it after Batman v Superman. Again this time, the animated film did it better. If you want to know the Suicide Squad the way I did, or the way I wanted to see them in live action, watch Assault on Arkham on Netflix. Batman Assault on Arkham, just a great Suicide Squad story. It utilizes Batman way better than this movie did. It utilizes the Joker way better than this movie did, and you care about the characters, but you do care about the characters in the live action version too. The live action version is a great movie. It's a great Will Smith movie sometimes, and Will Smith did a very good job. You can tell that he had notes for this movie, like he wanted all of his moments, and none of his moments detracted, but there was a lot of things for some of the other characters that just don't make sense, like bad humor. Killer Croc isn't very funny. Jai Courtney's character isn't very funny. Boomerang isn't that funny. But Boomerang's intro scene is my favorite scene in the movie. When you see Captain Boomerang for the first time, that is like one of the greatest scenes in any DC superhero film ever. Like, I was about to like start shaking. It was the coolest thing I ever fucking saw. So like, clearly there's things in this movie that like satisfied me, but then there's other things that are just like, why is this wasted potential? Why didn't they do something different, or why didn't they just go with the R rating? This movie's not made for DC fans, but it also is made for DC fans. Like, they don't have an audience that they chose. It's not made for one specific audience. If it was R, that would have made a better movie, but then the kids wouldn't be able to see it. So then they didn't make it R. But then they kept all the really dark shit that isn't for kids in it. So it's not really a kids movie either. They just want as much profit as possible. And now they're going to get more profit because everybody's going to be like, wait for the extended cut, the movie's going to be way better, you got to get the extended Blu-ray. No, I'm going to fucking not do that. The movie was supposed to be good now. It should have been good now. I don't want to wait like 5 months to see a better movie. It just shouldn't work like that. And it's just really sad that, you know, I'm glad David Ayer is defending it and saying this version of the movie was his final cut. But it wasn't. We know it wasn't. Like, there's so much more to this movie. Jared Leto said he filmed enough to film a whole Joker movie. That's how much Joker scenes he filmed, and they cut it all out, and they got rid of the stuff that made Harley and Joker's relationship abusive. They got rid of that, and that's such an important part of their character. And it's obvious that David Ayer wrote him to be abusive to Harley, but now he's saying that this movie is just their honeymoon phase, and that's why he's not abusing her. And I think it's because they were afraid of all the reception of Batman v Superman, and everybody was saying it was too dark, and you know, just not happy enough. But you should have just followed through with what you were doing with Suicide Squad, because this movie could have been better than Deadpool. If it was rated R and it was dark and it had everything going for it, it could have been way better than Deadpool. Because for me, Deadpool was like near perfect movie. But if it was just a little darker, I would have loved Deadpool even more. And I think Suicide Squad had the potential of being better than Deadpool. It came close, but it really just fell flat on its face. Because, you know, Batman v Superman, it was dark and depressing, all that, and I was against its tone before Batman v Superman came out, but when I saw Batman v Superman, I loved the tone. I like the darkness of it. It's the dialogue and storytelling that's just, like, so weak, and everybody said how they got bored watching Batman v Superman. I never got bored watching Batman v Superman. I got bored watching this movie. I got bored watching The Suicide Squad. Every time you cut back to Enchantress, bored. I was just, like, yawning. I was physically feeling the boredom. I was literally yawning every time they cut back, and that's something Batman v Superman wasn't even as bad. Like, and again, I'm a huge fan, so I can like be forgiving. But seeing this from the eyes of somebody who just likes filmmaking, it's just like, wow, this is just so cliche, so just obvious in its third act structure, and it's disappointing. It's not disappointing. It's mediocre, and that's the worst thing a movie can be anyway. So maybe I shouldn't compliment it as much. That's all I really have to say about this movie that's non-spoilery. I have a lot more thoughts, so I'm going to get into that in the next 5 minutes. We see a head explode. That's going to be my first spoiler, so get out of here if you don't want to hear anything else. The Suicide Squad have bombs in their neck, and I was afraid since this movie wasn't rated R that we weren't going to see a head explode. So glad we got that. Like, it made me so happy. I remember Clint Eastwood was confirmed for this movie, or not Clint Eastwood, sorry. Clint Eastwood's son was just a fucking throwaway character. I hated all the articles. It was like, who's Clint Eastwood's son gonna be in Suicide Squad? And everybody was like, just fucking losing their shit because he was in the movie. No, he's just nothing. He was nothing in the movie. I need to preface that Joel Kinnaman, Will Smith, Margot Robbie, Viola Davis, and the guy who plays Diablo, they're definitely the best characters in this movie. If I got more of Leto's Joker, the scenes that they filmed, I would have added him to this, but we get a taste of him, and I'm not saying that he wasn't bad, but he wasn't the best part of this movie, even though he was great. If we got more of him, like, there's a deleted scene that he comes back in the third act, but they didn't do that. They didn't give that deleted scene. If we got that, he would have been a bigger part of the movie. Since they didn't, he's just a taste, so I'm not going to say he was one of the best actors. But Joel Edgerton, like I said before in the same video, how I didn't think the Suicide Squad had a reason to form together at the end. But there really was a few. There was Rick Flagg's whole thing about Enchantress being his girlfriend, and the Suicide Squad feeling bad for him, and Diablo not being able to use his powers, and the team feeling bad for him, and just like working together and just overcoming their differences. There was reasons, but I just didn't think it flowed together well enough. I really hope we see Rick Flag again. Viola Davis is fucking just ruthless, and there's a moment where she just kills 3 people in her office, and it makes no fucking sense. There's no explanation, and you know, maybe the movie doesn't really need to give us an explanation. Maybe they just knew too much and she had to kill him, but it was just like so random, and it didn't make any sense to me. Why didn't she didn't just ask Deadshot to do it? In fact, she just did it herself. I've heard a lot of people say that Joker looks like Vulcan in this movie. I see it. That's the only point I'm bringing up there. Nothing else. Harley was perfect, but again, her origin was just nerfed, you know? The greatest thing about the animated series and Harley Quinn is that Joker sort of takes advantage of the fact that she's a psychologist, and he says, oh, if you come spend time with me, I'll tell you all my secrets, because she's a doctor, and she wants to hear about his psychological tendencies to, you know, to learn something. So he takes advantage of her psychological things, of the things she wants to learn, and he totally just spins it around on her and just uses her as an escape route of Arkham Asylum, and then sort of in turn falls in love with her, and she goes crazy. So I like that it showed how smart the Joker was, and how like he could even just like trick another smart person into thinking that she's helping them. That was a great thing about the animated series. Batman and Joker were definitely underutilized. Again, watch Assault on Arkham if you want to see, like, I was hoping to see Batman as a villain in this movie. Just see him just come across Suicide Squad at the end of the movie, and then if he showed up at the end and like his Batarang was like in the sky near the third act when they're saving everybody, and everybody in the world thought Batman saved everybody, that would have been so funny, because then it would just been like, well, shit, why did we save the whole world? Everybody thinks Batman did it, and we also had to fight Batman along the way, and that would have been really cool, because, well, I mean, come on, that Batman having a bigger role in this movie, and then seeing these heroes that we're rooting for go up against Batman, and wanting us to see him take down Batman, that'd be fucking awesome. Like, I don't really have any other things to say about this movie other than it should have been rated R.